welcome to Empowering Women Through Fitness. I'm your host, Bridget, Therese, and if you are joining us again, thank you. Again, once in a while it happens, we get technical difficulties because as amazing as technology is, it is challenging at times. So I had a difficult time adding Diana Stone, so we're just gonna jump right to it and see if it works this time. And if not, we will maybe just do an offline adding her again and see if this works. Before all of you, hey, there it is. Awesome.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can, and there's no feedback,
okay.
So you're perfect. Okay,
perfect.
Let me introduce the show since I've done it like 3 times now and no, I didn't, and it works. So I want to welcome Diana Stone. She is the owner of Still Standing Magazine, a magazine that is dedicated to families who have lost children. So for those of you who have been following me for quite a while, you know that I have experienced losing my daughter Claire. And so this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I know I have a lot of friends, some that I met through the loss, who have experienced the same thing. No matter what stage that you lose your child, it's a drastic, devastating time. And I am so grateful that Diana is here tonight to talk to us about not only her experience, but the fact that she is helping other people after experiencing such a difficult time is, to me, very amazing. So Diana, thank you for being here and welcome to this show.
Thank you. Thank you for being patient with me as well while we figured that out. I appreciate it.
No worries, not at all. So every show I start off, and if you're watching, before we jump into this, if you know somebody who's lost a child, or maybe somebody who's going through this, please feel free to share and private message this video to them, invite them to watch it. If you're watching on the replay, send it to them in their inbox, because it's a really difficult road to travel alone. So the more support you have, the better. So we're going to jump into it, Diana. Every show, and this will be a little bit more lighthearted. Every show that I have, I start with a little bit what I call icebreaker questions. So for those of us like myself who don't know you very well, we're going to ask you just a couple fun questions, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into your story. So first question is, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in some multiple places. I was born in New Jersey, but I ended up most of my life living in Colorado, in a small town in Colorado. And then for the last about 7, almost 8 years now, we've lived in El Paso, Texas.
Oh, you're in Texas. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I'm in Houston. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that answers my next question. Where you live now is El Paso.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. What is something you are grateful for today?
Oh, probably the fact that I wanted so long to be able to work from home, and I'm able to now, and it's just wonderful, and I'm able to do the things that I want to do, and be with my children, and it's really nice. That's
awesome. I recently was able to do the same thing, so I know what you mean, and it's such a blessing. If you could have lunch with anyone, who would it be and why?
So I watched some of your old lives, and so I knew this one was coming, and I had to think about it for a while. So mine would be Laura Ingalls Wilder, because I just grew up on her books, and I love her. I love the time period that she lived in, and she was always such an inspiration to me. So yeah, I think that having lunch with her would be amazing.
That's so funny. She's a big deal up in the Midwest, like in Wisconsin, like not too far from where I grew up. She was Laura Ingalls Wilder days and all kinds of fun stuff. What is the new skill you would like to learn?
So there's a couple. On a personal level, probably I'd love to learn another language, and then I would really love to learn how to do calligraphy really well. And then on a weird kind of, had this ever since I was maybe in high school or middle school, I've always wanted to learn how to play the drums, but I have no idea. So that's always just been kind of the thing that I wanted to learn how to do.
That's awesome. I love it. What is one item from your bucket list you've checked off?
Oh, going to Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, Zimbabwe. Yeah.
That's amazing. And the last question, what is the next item you'd like to check off in your bucket list?
Oh, I'd probably love to be able to go back to India one more time. It's been a long time since I've been over there, so probably that one more time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, crazy. So, we are connected through unfortunate circumstances. And I'm not sure how or when I came across, I see a lot of your articles or the articles from Still Standing Magazine shared. And I don't want to push too much, so I want you to share whatever you're comfortable with. But let's kind of talk about a little bit. I guess I want to kind of put it in your report because I don't want to push too much, so I want you to share what you're comfortable with and then maybe talk about how you got into Still Standing Magazine.
Sure. Yeah. And for anybody listening that's gone through this, this might be a little heavier than some. And also, some people watching might think to themselves, wow, like she kind of does that emotionless. But just know that,
Yeah.
I've told this a lot
Yeah.
and to different audiences, like a therapist versus like a new friend. And so, it's sad, but also, it's become my story, and I'm more and more comfortable with sharing as well. So, in 2012, uh, we already had my daughter, my oldest, Bella, and we very unexpectedly found out that we were pregnant with twins.
Oh.
And then we found out they were identical twin boys, so we were just thrilled. And when I was almost 20 weeks pregnant, my water broke at home, and I ended up in the hospital for almost a week. And they were still alive at that point, so we were going to try to get to 24 weeks. And I was treated very, very poorly where I was. They wanted me to go home. They wanted me to induce and just get it over with. It was very hard. And on top of eventually losing the boys, I had a lot of trauma and PTSD to work through because of what had happened.
Right.
So after about a week, I ended up going into labor and having them, and that was a very, very traumatic experience. It was, no one really knew I was in labor. And they were both alive. And so my twin A, he was called, who was Julian, he lived for a few minutes after he was born. And then twin B, who was Preston, he actually ended up living for almost 3 hours.
Wow.
Which they were, I think, most kind of shocked by, because, and I was as well, because we were told babies that little wouldn't survive for just minutes outside the womb. Yeah. And so that was very, very hard. And afterwards, I started going to therapy to try to work through some of the trauma of the hospital and what had happened, and losing them and things like that. And we started the process for an international adoption, and found out several months into it that it had fallen through, and we weren't going to be able, China had changed some of its rules, and we wouldn't be able to adopt. So that winter, I found out, and that was 2012, the end of that year, I found out that I was pregnant again. And it was pretty much, very high risk pregnancy because of what had happened. And I took, all the meds they told me and did everything they said, and everything was pretty textbook. And at 37 weeks, I was induced, went into labor, and had my little boy Caden, and he was perfectly fine. Ended up having some breathing issues, and they took him to the NICU just as a precaution. So he was there for about 4 days, and at 4 days, we got a phone call just saying he passed the car seat test, he's good to go, would you guys like to come pick him up today? My parents had come down from Colorado to stay with my daughter, and we were like, yes, we'll come get him. So my husband and I went, and he was waiting downstairs in like the lowest level NICU, and they were like, we're just having a pediatrician come in for that final exam, and then you guys will be set. And the pediatrician looked him all over and looked up at us, and he was like, I hear something weird on his heart, and so I'm going to have the cardiologist check it out just to be sure. And I just knew at that point, I think that's like the mother's instinct where you just know something is wrong.
Yeah.
And so we waited, and I was, attempting to nurse him, and he just kept falling asleep all the time, and we weren't really sure what was happening, but he seemed fine.
Yeah.
And just a few minutes after that, we got a knock on the door, and they asked us to come out immediately. They took him right from me, and the cardiologist escorted us in a room and said, Caden has a very sick heart. That's like, he was like, he has severe cardiomyopathy. I'm not even sure how he's still alive at this point. he needs to be flight for life to Dallas immediately and undergo probably a heart transplant. And we were just shocked because, I mean, we were about to take him home. So Caden spent the next 2.5 weeks in the hospital, and they found out that his cardiomyopathy was due to this rare, very unknown virus that apparently I carry through the maternal side on my family, and it's been passed down, called CIHHV6. So lots of people get HHV6 when they're little, and it kind of presents as a cold, and they're, 1 or 2, and then it goes away. But for us, it's like ingrained in every cell of our DNA, and only 1% of the population has it. There's a foundation out of California that studies all about it, and they're just now beginning to find out what this is and what it can do. So one of their tests actually came back like so far off the chart for it that they began digging to see, like, does anybody else have this? Like, what is this? And because there was so little information on CIHHV6, but they did know that it could be reactivated, they decided to take him off the heart transplant list for fear that if he got a heart, it would reactivate it and attack a new heart again. So on his 3-week birthday, Caden passed away, and it was very, very hard. And then the following year, we were towards the end of the domestic adoption, and the birth mother changed her mind. And so that was really tough. All through this, starting with Bella being very little, my oldest, I had started blogging just because I was home and I was kind of bored, and we lived in a small town at the time. There was really nothing to do. And so with the stuff with the twins, that kind of exploded from there. And then I began blogging through that whole situation and everything, and writing for Still Standing occasionally as well. I didn't really know anything about them at first, but I think after I lost Caden, somebody reached out and they were like, you need to follow this site because it's really good, for people who have lost a child. And then at the end of 2017, the founder, Fran, said one day that she was pursuing a master's, and so she was just like, I can't do everything. So I think that we're just going to shut Still Standing down at this point. And I reached out and I was like, would you consider letting me take it over and just trying to do the best I can with it? And she said, yeah, absolutely. So I took it over from there, and we've been, it's been over a year now, and it's definitely had some ups and downs. It was a lot more work than I ever thought it was going to be, for sure. But it's been life-changing. It really has, and it's been really, really healing to be able to walk these stories with so many men and women all over the world. And the things that we can survive sometimes just blow me away when I read these stories, and I just think still, like, how did you survive this? And it's been really amazing to be able to be a part of this.
So, wow. Thank you for being so open and sharing that. And it just, of course, stirs up a lot of emotions, and just kind of remembering that beginning phase. And personally, I struggled with with it a lot in the very beginning. I was very angry, very bitter. Of course, this, traditional why me, like, what did I do to deserve this and things like that. And I did go to traditional therapy, and I didn't find that it helped me at all, because it was just like a therapist going through a script. And what I found actually helped me the most, and I'm curious to kind of get your take on this, actually, and I'm super like one of those AA groups out of a dumb TV show where I have to go sit in a circle and listen to everybody's story and blah, blah, blah. But there was an organization called Nicholas's Gift that was there that kind of helped us, like, hey, this is going to be really difficult. When you're ready, we have a support group. And so we ended up going, and I remember, because as I was thinking about our conversation, I remember going probably the first couple times and just crying, listening to everybody else's story, not being comfortable sharing. But it wasn't until I was able to hear other people's stories and other people's experiences that it helped me to feel, one, not alone, two, not crazy, and I don't know what it was about it that helped me to heal, but I can't imagine being in your shoes where you go through one and then have another experience and another experience after that and so much break. Like what do you think it was that kept you strong?
So there were probably a couple things. At first, when I lost the twins, it was very much my faith.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian, and so it was very much that of just kind of clinging to that and the community that came out. As much as I didn't want that community, because I was like, I don't, I just wanted to be a fun blogger. I can't believe like this is what I have to write about now. But that community, like you said, it just makes you feel less crazy during that time, less alone. And that was huge for me because we had just moved to El Paso when all this happened. And our family was, all 700 miles away. And so I didn't really know anybody even here. And I was going through all this. But after I lost Caden, the thing that really saved me was being able to allow myself to be really, really angry at God and really angry at my faith and feeling very betrayed for a very long time. And I had to fight with a lot of other people's conceptions. They didn't believe that that was healthy or okay, or that they wanted me to just be okay with God and be okay with my faith and get back on track. And I just couldn't. And so being able to go through that and to tell myself like this is okay. It is okay to be angry at God because I believe that he already knows how mad I am. So really pretending isn't going to help anything. It allowed me to work through a lot and allowed me to work through a lot of my emotions towards other people and situations and things that had happened as well. Yeah.
Wow. And I very much relate to that. And my now ex-husband, when we were married, we dealt with it very differently. He ran to church, and I was like, oh, hell no, am I going to church? Like, no way, Jose. And it actually took me a really long time. And I remember at the time I decided to be like at peace with God with it. And I was like, and I like had nothing to do with pregnant women, showers, babies, anything. Like, I was like, whatever, I'm going to act like whatever. You know how it goes. I don't need to explain it to you. I was just very bitter and didn't want to be around that. And so I remember finally going to church again, and I went by myself that Sunday, and I went to Second Baptist Church in Houston, and they always do like a prayer call at the end. And I decided I'm like, you know what, I just need to leave it at church this time. And I go up, and of course the person they pair me with happens to be a pregnant woman. So it was just kind of funny how the irony of that works, but it took me a very long time to accept it, not be angry, not be bitter, and have all these feelings. And probably not till too recent, even be able to share my story and see that it can be used as a purpose. But I guess, have you come to the other side of your anger? Like, where would you say you are at the anger as far as that goes, and what helped you to come back to your faith?
Yeah, in many ways I am.
And I would also add that it's always a work in progress.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. For many years I didn't go back to church, and I didn't really do anything because I was just so angry, and I wrote a lot about it. And fought through a lot about it, trying to figure out what I even believed or anything like that anymore. And it was kind of just a combination of things. I went back to school. World Vision had reached out in 2014 about me going with a group of social media people to Zimbabwe to learn about maternal and infant health work over there, because that has one of the highest rates of infant and maternal death. And so I went over, and that was life-changing, to say the least. I mean, it was just really, really powerful to see and to hear those stories. They brought a couple of women in that I was able to talk to, and to hear what they had gone through, and that there was so much that needed to be changed over there. But at the same time, their faith was just so different than here in America,
Yeah.
you know, and so it was just like it was amazing to watch that unfold. So I think that was a huge part of it, and coming back, and I enrolled back in school and finished my bachelor's degree, which I kind of hopped from like thing to thing to thing over the
Yeah.
years, with a purpose. And next month I go back to do my master's, to
That's
be
awesome.
an LPC. And so it was, yeah, I don't know that there was any one thing, but I still have a lot of, I still have a lot of trouble being happy for people that, you know, have babies and announce pregnancies. I think there's
Yeah.
always just that strike at my heart. We've gone on to have another child. Charlotte's 3, and she was born about a year and a half, or almost 2 years after Caden. But doesn't, it doesn't make any of that go away. And those first few months with her were just, they were very, very rough.
Yeah.
And yeah, so definitely the community though helps to heal that, because I think that as long as you don't let yourself get completely flown away in the anger and the bitterness, because you can to an extent, but as long
Yeah.
as it doesn't completely take over your life in like the most unhealthy way,
Yeah.
I think that it can help to be there for a while with people who do understand and are accepting of that.
Yeah. I think it also, and maybe you can relate to this too, but I had my son first, and I think having a child still that needed me kind of gave me a little bit of a boost, or like something to live for, like something I still have to be a mom for. Let's talk about having your daughter. And I ask because as soon as this happened to me, and I'll be honest on the live on social media, but like I went on double birth control. I'm like, I am never having another kid. Like this will, no, nobody or no one or God or nothing is gonna. If I have a baby, I'm having a baby Jesus, because it isn't happening. So I was very much like, stay away from me, like. But as some of the anger, bitterness, like if I were to open my heart again to that, like there's so much fear and anxiousness around it. Like, how was that experience for you? Like, did it take you a long time to get attached to her? Like, are you still like, okay, is she still alive? I mean, how is that journey?
So she was a surprise. I was very much like, I can't go through this anymore. 2 failed adoptions and 3 losses, and I'm done. So she was a surprise, and I spent the entire 9 months with her completely terrified. She is our last. I can never put myself emotionally through that again, and I don't, knowing that we don't know how to fix whatever is going on with me, I don't think that I could do that. But it was very, very hard, and it was something I wasn't quite prepared for when she was born. I hadn't been around a newborn since my son had died, and here was a newborn that looked almost exactly like him, and I was just terrified and broken, and flashbacks and trauma and everything just combined at one time, plus your postpartum and hormones. And so
I can imagine.
yeah, for months it was very hard to deal with all of that, and just everything about her reminded me of him and what I didn't get. And so yes, I still go in and check on her at night. The other night I laid my hand on her to make sure she was breathing, just like I do every night before I go to bed. And I started to leave, and then I thought, but did I really know she was breathing? I had to go back and like put my hand on her again. And so it's completely changed like my parenting style with her, as opposed to my first daughter. Then they're 6 years apart. It just made me, I want to say it made me a better parent, but I just think it made me a more neurotic parent, really, and almost overly cautious in a lot of ways too, because I know how it feels to lose a baby and to lose a child and to lose that whole life. And there's that fear of like, if I can control this, maybe it'll never happen again.
Yeah, I can't imagine. So with the Still Standing magazine, is it all digital? Everything's online? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share any stories or anything from the magazine, or women or families you've talked to that just stand out to you, or where you've maybe seen like a sliver of like purpose in all of this, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So gosh, there are some amazing, amazing stories out there. One of them that I'll say is my friend Kayla Mugford. She actually helps with Still Standing as well, and she just last year, and her 1 year is coming up again, lost her second child. So she lost her firstborn son, and it was a terminal diagnosis at 20 weeks, and she carried him into the 30s, gave birth, he lived a few hours and died. She went on to have two healthy children, decided to have one more, and like at the exact time frame, like month, week, everything, she found out at 20 weeks that this little boy had the same condition.
Oh my God.
And she carried him until he was born, and he lived a few hours and died. And so his 1 year birth date is next week. And her story, just because we've known each other since she lost her first son, which was right before I lost my twins. Yeah. And I just couldn't believe it when she was like, I have to go through this all again. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then, there's others. There's one who, Liam's Legacy, and I think her post goes live in just a few days as well. But she's already written for us, and her little boy drowned at a friend's get together. He was 3 years old, and they were all there, and she just looked around and was like, it was split second. Where's Levi's Legacy? That's because there's another one named Liam, but Levi's Legacy, and she said, where's Levi? And he was at the bottom of the pool. And they just never revived him. And so she has become a really strong advocate for, drowning prevention and teaching children how to swim at an early age. And she's an amazing human being. So there are a lot. There are quite a few. One more would be my friend Lori, who actually ran Still Standing as the editor for several years, in between Fran and then me. And she did fertility treatments for about 10 years trying to get pregnant. Finally went to full term. There was a freak accident at the end in labor. Her little guy was born. He was immediately flight for life to a hospital with his dad, and she couldn't go because she was so sick from it. And she got to reach in and just barely touch him before he left, and he died the next day.
My gosh.
And yeah. So, and she has a little boy. She, I think about a year later, they ended up pregnant with their one and only living child. And, but yeah, there's really amazing stories. I don't know that there's a purpose. The purpose is for Still Standing is that while we feel like a lot of the silence has been broken around losing a child in many ways, because you can see it, on Scary Mommy and the Today Show and Huffington Post, and it's wonderful that a lot of these things are being run to make it more normalized for people, so that we're not just on the outskirts of a community wondering where we fit in. Yeah, but I think for Still Standing, it's important because we're the place that you can go. You're not going to see a post about, I lost my child, and then the next post is, 20 reasons your kids drive you insane. It's just not going to happen. And while that has a time and a place, and I have two kids, so I can understand that, it's a sacred little spot where you're just never going to see that pop up on there. It's kind of like its own little safe space for people who need that.
Yeah. And that's so important too, because when you're in that phase, people say the stupidest stuff, and you just want to slap everybody, and you're just in this. I had people try to compare it to my loss to their son no longer going to church. I'm I will punch you. There's so many stupid things that people say, and you're just this is my journey. Leave me alone. What would you say? I don't know. I don't even know how to ask you or what to ask you. But I guess with Still Standing magazine, what is your vision with it? What is the future of it? And is that something you want to continue with your master's? Are you going to continue down this path, or do you feel called into another area, or how is that?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that my master's degree just ties in really nicely with what I do with Still Standing, and then just helps it with, maybe things that I know, or however I can help. I'd love eventually, once I'm licensed, to be able to do a column where people could write in and say like, hey, I need help with this, and it would be published. Eventually, maybe we'd love to do a podcast where we interview different moms and dads that have gone through loss and infertility and talk to them about their journeys as well. But I think the main thing is just to be able to share these stories and to start. Our hope is that we start to make a change in how loss is handled during and after, because we did a recent Facebook poll about, do you think that your treatment in hospital when your child passed away, either during or when, was helpful or hurtful, and almost like, I think it was like 48% of people said no, I left traumatized, like and then just story after story. And I think we have a long way to go in how men and women are treated once they lose a child. That's something that we really, really want to advocate for. And I feel like if we can start it in the more developed countries that have the ability to do that, and we can say, look, we can change things here, then it would be easier for us to go to developing countries like Zimbabwe and places like that that really are struggling at the very core, and say, look, we've made these changes over here. We can start really simply here and work our way up to, how women are treated. I mean, in Zimbabwe, like, there were women that told me their story. They had a stillbirth and they took the baby away. The women buried it while the woman was still in the hospital, and they were never ever allowed to speak about it again because it was considered bad luck, and that they would have another child who died if they had. And so they lived like 20, 30 years without ever talking about what had happened to them and their baby. And that is just, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and I really agree with you. And I mean, it has I do a lot of social media, a lot of branding and all that kind of stuff. So it has my business wheels spinning right now. But even like Zoom calls or support groups for people who like live in the middle of nowhere and don't have something like that. I mean, I'm forever grateful for the group that I had, and maybe that's something where you can just recruit a few women to lead coaching sessions, or just have like Zoom calls where 10 women get on and they get a chance to share their stories or hear other people's stories, or like in those groups to go out into various hospitals. Our hospital, we were fortunate enough to have a lady that was basically on call for when that happened. I don't even think she does it anymore, I'm not sure. But to have somebody come in who went through what I went through, and able to like give me hope and be like, you want to get something to remember her, you want to have something that you can bury with her, that you can keep with you, like, do you want me to take pictures? And it's like, I never really look at those pictures, but I have them. And just like things like that you don't even think of in the moment, and having some sort of support system that, here's all of these resources, and this is going to be hard, here's how you handle this. Just almost like a hotline. Shoot, if there was things like that, it would be a lot easier to navigate this road. So if you start anything, I will be with you to support you and help you with whatever thing. I got Houston, but yeah. So I appreciate that, and I couldn't agree more with that vision, and maybe that will be how God can use you in all of this, is to continue to help people heal. Because no matter what anybody says, it's like, it's hard to believe that there's a reason good enough that we should have had to lose our kids. But at the same time, if we can't turn it around and use it for good, then it's gone to waste too. Is how I make myself feel better about it. But I guess for now, what would you say to somebody who is going through loss, or maybe just experienced loss, or maybe has never had a platform to ever talk about it? What would you say to that person is a way of support? And then we'll wrap it up from there.
I think I would say that, this is your unique journey, and there's a lot of pull from all sides after you go through something really traumatic and life-changing, because people want to see you happy, and grief is uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think that the best thing you can do is to realize, like, this is a process that will be the rest of your life. And as much as we all hate the term new normal, it's kind of what it does evolve into, is your new normal self and your new normal life, but it's an evolving process. So allow yourself to be where you are, and don't feel guilty for that, because you're where you need to be right now, depending on your circumstances and what you believe and what you've been raised with and your support system. We're all just doing the best we can with where we are and what life has handed us. So, to let go of that guilt and just to be present in where you are, and work through it and reach out for support to people who will accept where you are in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would suggest, once you're at a point, to reach out to somebody who's gone through it, because most women or people that I know are very eager to be like, embrace you and understand. And there's so much power and healing in that. So, yeah, very powerful stuff. But Diana, I want to thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for being open and sharing your story. And of course, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I remember your babies with you. And for all of those who've watched or watching the replay, watching YouTube, wherever you've seen this, if you've gone through the same thing, our hearts go out to you. We understand. And I'm always open to a conversation about this if you need any support. I also encourage you to go check out Still Standing Magazine. I've inserted the link. And I may need to go back and edit the show notes to tag the Facebook page as well. But so many resources available to you there. And reach out and connect with somebody if you've gone through this, if you know somebody who's going through this. Very powerful stuff. So thank you, Diane. You can go ahead and hit your little X in the window, and I will go ahead and close out the show. But thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Whew, you guys, that was a heavy episode. So if you've watched from beginning to end or just grabbed some of it, I really appreciate you watching. And again, this is such a personal experience for me. It was such a tragedy that I went through, but it also has made me into the person who I am. So a lot of times you see, oh, she's so strong, or oh, this or oh, that, but I've been through some difficult times, and it's really what has shaped me into who I am today. But if you know anybody, again, I just reiterate that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always more than happy to connect and help you through this in whatever way. I have books back here that I've read that were helpful. So thank you so much for watching. Next week, I am talking to Amber, and I'm excited to talk to her. We're going to lighten up the mood and talk a little bit more exciting stuff. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good night.